There's a well-known story about a guy who visited a village. And as he came to the shul, right outside the shul was the village cemetery. He was quite shocked. We looked at the tombstones. And he saw in this town, everybody died young. This one died at the age of 7 years, this one died at the age of 14 years, and this one died at the ripe old age of 21 years. So after seeing this very strange, pathetic, and I guess tragic cemetery, he walked into the shul. There's a bunch of old men sitting there. And he asked the old men, very, very surprised, because on the one hand, I look around the cemetery, and everyone in this town died young, and I come to the shul, and everyone here is old. So people in the shul said to him, no, you don't understand. That's not how we do it in our town. We don't write on their tombstone how many years they live physically. We write on their tombstone how many years they actually live productively. How many years they actually spent their time with us. Because what ultimately matters is not how long our lives are, but rather how we spend the time in our life, how we use every minute which Hashem grants us. And this mashal of the story about the cemetery in some ways I think reflects the idea of what Chazal use in the Gemara. When they say, in describing long life, arichut yamim v'shanim, we should have long days and years. Arichut shanim, I understand. Long years means that they live a long time. What does it mean, long days? Well, now the answer is obvious. A long day means the day is filled with meaning. We don't only want to have many years, we also want to have long days. We want to make sure that if we're going to have years, we may as well make sure that every day within those years is filled with something meaningful and worthwhile. Our job is not simply to have long life, but to have productive lives. To make sure that after 120 years, our tombstone doesn't say he lived for 120 years, but he was only a 10-year-old in terms of productivity. Our job is to make sure that we use every single moment that we can as productively as possible, to make the most of everything. We stand now at the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, tonight, the start of a 6-month stretch of real learning, more or less uninterrupted. It can be a bit daunting. This is the heart of the yeshiva year, and in some ways it's, depending on your perspective, more fortunate or unfortunate than other years who 12 out of every 19 years don't get 6 months, they only get 5 months. You guys get an extra month over here. And the question which has to occupy every single one of us is, how can I make sure that I maximize every single moment of the Winter Zman? How can I make sure that the next 6 months, which really start right now, Rosh Chodesh, how do I make sure that I have the next 6 months and make them the best, most productive, most meaningful, most spiritually fulfilling, most intellectually stimulating months of my life? How do I make sure that on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, in 6 months, we look back and say, those were amazing months? So I started jotting down some notes yesterday. Started writing things down. Had a hard time putting into words exactly what I thought. Wasn't sure what the best way to figure out what the methodologies are. Methodologies, what do I know? Each of us has our own experience. And even if I could go and figure out what works for me, a couple tricks of the trade, things I've learned in my own life, who's to say those are going to work for anybody else? So I did something which I never did before for a Sikha. I opened up the Yesodei HaTorah alumni group on Facebook, 173 members. And I then, not all are alumni, right, okay, but then most are. And I asked them, I said, if you could tell Shana Aleph and Shana Bet guys how to maximize the next 6 months, what would you say? I know what happened. But I think 27 different people weighed in. And some of them gave more than one comment also. And I'll tell you something, when I saw them, I was actually pretty impressed because, by and large, they were very serious and, I thought, extremely insightful ideas. And ultimately, looking at them all, I was able to group them into 8 fundamental rules, which I think they fall under. And this Sikha, therefore, is titled How to Make the Next 6 Months the Best of Your Life, but could also be titled The Advice of Yesodei HaTorah Alumni Who Answered My Call of How to Make the Next 6 Months the Best of Your Life. And it says Masechet Tanya Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, in the name of Rabbi Chanina. I learned a lot from my rabbis. I learned from my friends more than from my rabbis. But I learned most from my students. In this case, this maxim is certainly true. So what I'm saying tonight is not at all from me. Everything I'm saying tonight is simply things which I heard from Talmidim who, once upon a time, sat in here or in there, learning the same way you are, in the same place. And this is from their experience, having been through it and looking back with the wisdom gained from having gone through it themselves, and perhaps with the wisdom gained from having seen what life was like after yeshiva. This is what they say everyone should look forward to. So I want to give you the 8 ideas suggested by Yesodei Torah alumni in order to make the next 6 months the best of your life. If you don't like these ideas, don't blame me. I didn't write them. All right. All right. I'm going to read them word for word. I'm going to say who said them also. Some of you might know the names. Jeremy Shapiro suggests during Winter Zman is when you start to develop a routine. This is the perfect time to start a personal project in learning. Get a chavruta, make a seder every day, and stick to it. Once you're into the routine, it is monumentally easier to stick to it, and monumentally harder to begin. I wish I had properly taken advantage of this time in yeshiva. Mati Feinstein adds, well, probably, but I said in my Tanakh Siyum, which he gave at the end of last year, that's probably, he means this is what I would say. Choose some project, set aside a small, certain amount to do every day, no matter what. In a year, you'll be shocked at what you've done. So now we have the first way to maximize your time in yeshiva. And this is to set personal learning goals. Now some of you, on Simchat Torah, already began this process. When you bid for various things, learning units. How's it going so far? Good? 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 Great. Okay, good. In the past, there were students who did that. As I mentioned to some of you, we were talking to David about this, talking to Mickey about it, I think also. In the past, there were students who did this kind of thing, and it literally changed their year. They bid on Simchas Torah, an amount beyond which they thought they could not even think of doing. In the end, they actually had a far better year as a result because of these extra projects they took on. It changed their year and hopefully afterwards their lives. But it's not too late. Simchas Torah was only a week ago, and we have a long Zman. If you haven't yet taken on a special private project, take on a personal goal. Think of something you want to do. There are so many things you can do. Just as a small example, my Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Chabura, it's about a page and a half a day. By June, everyone will finish the entire Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Can you imagine that? You have a full overview of practical halacha. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying it's an example of an easy thing to do. Who does the Kitzur Chabura? Who's how long does it take you a day to do what I put up usually?
How's the day? 30 minutes.
Huh?
30, 45 minutes.
30, 45 minutes. And by the end of the year, God willing, we'll finish a whole book. Right? That's not the only example, though. There's so many different examples. I mean, let's talk about, if you do one paragraph of Mishnayos a day, you know how long it takes you to finish all of Shas Mishnayos? A paragraph a day. Shmuel, how long does it take? Finish all of Shas Mishnayos.
2.5 years.
Huh?
2.5 years.
Year and a half. About 540 prakim. If you do 18 prakim a day, you'll finish in a month. Some people finish Shas Mishnayos every month. They sit at the bus stop, they go over Mishnayos in their head, they finish the whole thing in a month. I'm not suggesting you do that yet, maybe one day. But if you do one parak a day, you finish in 18 months, right? Math, right? One parak of Rambam a day. You know how long it takes you to finish all of Rambam?
3 years.
Not even. 1,000 days. Almost 3 years, but not quite. Okay? Huh?
Very little conversation.
The Rambam is exactly 1,000 prakim. Okay? Was it a coincidence? I don't think so. If you learn a daf of Gemara, then you'll finish Shas in 7.5 years. A little less. Again, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it'd be kind of cool to be a 25-year-old who already finished Shas. You know, pretty nice thing. Take on projects, but there is a caveat to this, which I want to add. Okay, there's a caveat that it's not just about. I mean, there's so much caveats. It's an additional point. It's not only about taking on projects, because Benjamin Bromberg adds another point in the same idea. I would tell them to make the goal that they would like to reach more than what they think they can do. The only thing that holds us back from improving is working to our current potential, in quotes. For example, if a guy's ability is to only come to the official shiurim in classes, I would tell him to add another 30 minutes a day anyway. When working out with an instructor, you never hear the instructor say before they begin the first set, you can only do 20 push-ups. Therefore, our goal is 20. The instructor will say, do 21. And when he reaches 21, he'll say, do one more. One can only look at himself in a subjective manner, causing himself to underestimate himself. And the best way to counter it is to aim past your expectations. The only thing holding us back is ourselves. If we fight the natural inclination to underachieve by trying to overachieve, we will improve. Nothing is holding you back except for your own lack of confidence. I tell this story a bunch of times a year, but I'm going to say it again. So, guys, bear with me. But the Netziv, Palestine Yehuda Berlin, it was one of the great Gedolim of the 19th century. He's the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin for a long time, up to his final years. And the Netziv one day finished one of the many Svarim which he wrote. He finished composing it. And as he finished the Sefer, he made a big siyum. And he made, at that siyum, a very, very memorable speech. And he told everybody, let me explain why I am making this very big siyum today. I'm going to finish this. He said, when I was a child, I was in yeshiva. And I was no good. I was not a good student. I was not successful in my learning. I didn't work very hard. And one day I was home, playing in my yard, and I heard my parents say to each other, that he's not going to make it. He's obviously not cut out to be a London. So we're going to send him to learn a trade, to be a shoemaker. And I went to my parents. I said, no, please give me another chance. I'm really going to work hard. Give me another Zman to see if I can really achieve more than I did until now. And finally, I started working really hard. And even though I have only average intelligence, I worked really, really hard, and I was able to do much more than I previously thought possible. But Netziv continued. He said, let's imagine, however, that I had not gone to my parents, and I said, okay, you're right. Let's go to learn how to be a shoemaker. You know what? I would have grown up, and I would have been a shoemaker. And I would have been an honest shoemaker. And every day, gone to work. And then at the end of the day, I would have gone to shul, would have a mincha. After mincha, I would have learned mishnayos, like all the other guys there. Then we would have a mariv. I come home. And then after 120 years, I go to Shamayim, ready to receive my reward for being an honest, good, learning mishnayos everyday shoemaker. And when I get to Shamayim, you know what would happen? I'd go there, ready to hear about my praises, and the malachim would come forward. The angels would come forward and say, where's your Perush on Chumash? Where are your Chidushim on Shas? Where are all these Svarim that you were supposed to write? And I would have said, Svarim? Chidushim? A Perush on Chumash? A Perush on the Shiltos? I can't write that. I'm a simple shoemaker. And I would have been wrong, because I could have written it. You know how I know? Because I did. You have to see past your own sense of your limitations and see how far you can take it. That's the first thing. To set goals, and using Benny's idea, maybe take it even a little further. Okay, the second idea. Akiva Weisinger. I'm going to say something counterintuitive. You have limited time, but there is a lot of it. Go slowly. Take the time to go in depth. Don't worry if your growth isn't going as quickly as you imagined. That would manifest itself in the taking on of projects, but even in that, take this attitude. He's going to give a personal example. I took on two main projects, my Shana Aleph, to go through Nach and to go through Mishnayot. For some reason, and perhaps and perhaps why this was so interesting, I wanted to finish as much Mishnah as I could, but with Nach, I had less of that attitude to finish everything. So, I would read as many Mishnayos as I could handle in an hour, then take out my Nach and read through it, writing down pshat questions. I finished 2 Siddharim of Mishnah and 3 books of Nach. In terms of ratios, 2 out of 6, Mishnayot, seems much better and more accomplished than 3 out of 24 Nach. But, says Akiva, I know those 3 books way, way, way better than I do those Mishnayot. If you gave me a quiz on those Siddharim of Mishnah, I'd fail. But if you tested me on those books of Nach, I'd ace it. Taking the time to know that stuff well and sit there learning it rather than trying to already have learned it, meaning to just run through it, I think was more valuable than rushing through Zerayim and Moed. In other words, he did a lot more Zerayim and Moed than he did Nach. But he actually took the Nach much more seriously because he went through it slowly. So, in other words, it's not only quantity, it's also quality. Don't always sacrifice things by running through things so fast to accomplish your Torah units or whatever other goals are, and in the process lose the chance to really know something really, really well. So, the second way I'm going to rephrase, the second way to maximize your time in yeshiva this month. Decide that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. I tell people that all the time when they talk about going to college. Once in a while you hear somebody say, yeah, I'm going to go to YU, but I'm not going to take my secular studies seriously. I'm just going to take morning Seder, I'm going to sort of run through my secular studies. My response to that is, if that's your attitude, don't bother going to college. Just go to yeshiva. If you're going to go to college, which I think you should, then by all means, do well in your secular studies. Once you're going to go, then do well. If it's not worth doing at all, then don't do it. If it's not worth doing well, then don't do it. But if you're going to go to college, try to get A's. Don't say, yeah, I'm going to take my Torah seriously, but not my secular studies. Then why are you wasting your parents' money going and studying them at all if you're not going to take it seriously? Once something's worth doing, do it well. It's true here also. Don't just worry about the quantity, also worry about the quality. Okay, 3 is the next step. Ari Roth. Yeshiva is like Jewish batteries for the rest of your life. And a lot of people fall off after they leave. I think it helps if when you have the time in yeshiva, you dedicate some time to think about what your days are going to look like wherever you go next, what your challenges will be, and how you will overcome them. You can maximize your time in yeshiva, and that's great. But if you do nothing afterwards, it's less great. Maximize your life, not just time in yeshiva. Michael Marks. I think it's important to emphasize the role of reflective thought while one is in yeshiva. The amount of siyumim a student makes is an important element of what goes on in yeshiva. But if it lacks a personal, intimate avoda that is not immediately apparent to the people around us, I think it's hard for much of the growth that occurs to put down roots that make yeshiva into a truly formative experience instead of a year of religious fanaticism. A year of religious fanaticism as the prelude to 4 years of enacting the events depicted in Asher Roth's I Love College music video. It's not just about... I didn't know what he meant by that, so I looked it up, and I'm still sorry. Personal, intimate avoda beyond the learning. Avi Kirstein. Every night before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what did I accomplish today? If your answer is, I don't know, or nothing, it means that your day was not as successful as it could have been. Constantly set new goals and look for ways to improve every day. Yeshiva is the ideal time to set up healthful habits for the future. Are you sklar? Yeshiva is like a teva. This is seasonal. Noach didn't prepare in the teva. Met the real world after he left the teva. Couldn't handle it. So get ready now. Ari Sklar continues. Yeshiva is like the desert. Where Bnei Israel traveled, ate the man. But when they finally had the chance to use it in the Holy Land, they got scared and had to stay for 39 more years. We do not have a Shana Lamed Tet program. Make sure you're ready. Ari Sklar. Yeshiva is like the city of refuge, your miklat, where we are amongst the holy Levim and the Kohen Gadol. That would be Stephen Cohen. We were immature, underdeveloped, and needed guidance. We needed fixing. Take advantage. What all these are talking about is a third way to maximize your Zman. Take time for cheshbon hanefesh. What's cheshbon hanefesh? Personal reflection. Maybe through Musar, but certainly thinking about things in your own mind. Sometimes it's a problem. I'm looking and I see this all the time. The guys overanalyze their lives. They can't move forward because they're constantly thinking about what the next step is. But even though overanalyzing your life and over-worrying about the next step is extremely counterproductive, you should certainly not go through the year without taking time to think about what you want this year to actually mean in the rest of your life. This is a unique opportunity to figure out what role Torah is going to play in the rest of your life. It's time to prepare for the rest of your life. Every once in a while you have to stop and think and prepare. Okay, the fourth way is Jackson Richmond. As much as it's important to develop your learning in Limud Torah, nevertheless, the way you act as a Ben Torah matters. Develop good habits, such as time management, and, of course, interacting well appropriately towards your peers. Developing and improving one's personality is crucial to approaching the rest of life. The Torah may help and advise you to be a better person, but only you can internally decide to fix yourself and strive to be a better person, and that is done through your actions. Yeshiva is the opportune time to develop yourself personally not just in learning Torah. There's somebody else, I'm not going to say his name, because of what he says, even though it's well, okay. What I did, this was a few years ago, I told myself that the rest of my life, after yeshiva, I have the rest of my life to party, drink, smoke, and hang out with girls and do stupid things. But this 1 year, I will spend doing something important. I'll never get this opportunity again, but throughout the rest of my life, I'll have the opportunity to party and do stupid things. But now in this moment, I told myself, don't waste what you have on something you can do later. I've said that every year since I've been at Yesodei Torah. I think I procrastinated the party animal out of me. Okay? This is the fourth way to maximize your experience. You not only worry about your intellectual Torah growth in terms of learning, but also about your spiritual and personal growth in your Torah. Yeshiva is not a university, which I say very often. We are not professors who just want to impart the material, hope that you understand it, and that's all we care about. When things go right, Torah affects you internally. Sometimes you got to give it a little push, and it's not enough, and we certainly would not be satisfied if a person decided that he were going to become a great Torah scholar, but it would not affect him in any personal way, such that he became a better person. That would be a failed situation. There's even a term that people in the yeshiva world use for that. They call it a chamor nosei sfarim. It's a donkey carrying books. You know, some people carry their books on their back, donkeys. Some people carry their books in their head. They're still donkeys. It's important to let the Torah permeate you and make you the best person you can possibly be. And one of the best ways to do that is suggested by Ezra Shimon Rosenfeld. Take 15 minutes out of your 2.5-hour night seder to find a chavruta for a halacha seder. Most halachas are very easy to learn, and students would be shocked if they knew how many things they are doing incorrectly out of ignorance that would take no effort to do correctly if they only knew the halacha. Do it with a chavruta. He said chavrusa. Do it with a chavruta. If you do it by yourself, you will forget about it. It might not feel like you're gaining anything, but it makes a huge difference in your avodas Hashem. Once again, make sure you grow not just as a learner, but in terms of knowing what to do. Personally, in terms of being a real Torah Jew. Following halacha. Okay, the fifth thing. Michael Always. Pretending to understand things, even small things, in order to look smarter, is worse than wasting your time. You will actually begin to convince yourself that you really do understand. In order to maximize your time, ask pointed questions when you don't understand, and don't be embarrassed about how you will look. He also adds, I do not know if it's a metaphor. Also, if you soap up beforehand, you can shower in half the time. Take it for what it is, okay? Michael Always is a very deep person. I'm sure this is a metaphor. Right, Michael? Okay. Jeremy Shapiro adds, do not be afraid to challenge yourself and don't get discouraged. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Sooner than you know it, you will get the hang of it. And this is a crucial point. It cannot be emphasized enough. The fifth way to maximize your Zman is to have intellectual and spiritual humility. Rav Licky said the very first day of yeshiva, he says the very first day of yeshiva for the past 10 years, Ein habayshan lamed, someone who is too embarrassed to be seen as wrong will never learn. A person who always is trying to say, I knew that, will never be able to learn. You can't be afraid to be wrong. As I try and say in my share, I'm an equal opportunity offender. Everyone is wrong all the time. And there's nothing wrong with showing it. All right? Moreover, let me give you one more thing which I think is quite important, which is that another manifestation of the same idea about having some humility is people often say that, oh, I don't like a certain shiur. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes a certain shiur is not for them. And I've heard it from tens of students over the past couple of years even, probably hundreds over the years. I don't like this, I don't like that shiur. Sometimes it's right to leave a shiur. But there's a reason why the shiur is on the schedule. The people who put that on the schedule are people who, hopefully, on some level, know what they're doing. So when we put something on a schedule, whether it's Marbekis, whether it's not, whether it's Chumash, whether it's philosophy, whether it's halacha, doesn't make a difference. If it's there in a mandatory course, there's probably a reason why we think it's important that you learn it. Now, once again, it may very well be that it's wrong for you. I accept that. But part of having humility is saying, well, you know something? I don't necessarily have the same experience as my Rebbeim, so if they say I should try it, let me at least give it a fair shot. Maybe there's a reason why they put it on the schedule. All right, that's part of humility. Okay, let's go on to the sixth reason, or sixth way, by David Kabinsky. If you are feeling burnt out, it's never happened, speak to someone. You may need to take it a little easier as opposed to sitting in the Beit Midrash for hours not accomplishing anything. Go onward. Akiva Weisinger, this is quite long, but he says something. I see a lot of people here, he's referring to the list, okay, saying things like this is your last chance, only 6 months, and things of that nature. Obviously, that does reflect a sincere and genuine desire for growth, but that has to be balanced out by the fact that burnout is a reality. And overburdening yourself with the notion that you have only 6 months left in your life to learn can lead to worsening that burnout with guilt and anxiety. You have to be realistic with yourself and know what you're capable of, and know when to take breaks and relax, so that your learning remains constant throughout. The Zman is a marathon, not a sprint, and attempting to sprint through it will only lead you to collapse halfway through. You don't see that point emphasized very much because it's not exactly inspirational, but it's an important thing to realize. Similarly, you should not expect the Zman to be a 6-month-long, non-stop learning fest where every day you smile and every day there's sunshine and rainbows and unicorns prancing along the road to Ezra V'Achva. It will be hard sometimes. Sometimes you don't want to get out of bed for Shacharis. Sometimes you'll hate living in Israel. Sometimes the Maram Shif won't make sense. Who am I kidding? Maram Shif never makes sense. He said that, not me. Okay? That may sound like blasphemy now. But if you acknowledge that these things may happen, you'll be better prepared to deal with it instead of thinking that everything's worthless because you're not living in a religious utopia. Rav Yitzchak Hutner's letter to a student should be absolute required reading for every serious religious individual. I'll mention that in a moment. On the subject of required reading, I put together a list of things I think every thinking modern Orthodox person should read at some point, which is all solely my opinion. This is Akiva Weisinger. And I'm far from a legitimate religious authority. Of course, from that, he might be. But if it would be of use to anyone in yeshiva, feel free, same for me, to give it to them. I said, oh, that's interesting. I'll print it out. It's like 70 pages long. I ran out of toner in printing that thing. So if anyone's interested, I'm happy to show it to you. Okay, that's Akiva Weisinger. One day, Akiva Weisinger, if we're lucky, we'll teach in this yeshiva. He's a very special guy. Blasphemy aside. But when he cites Rav Hutner's, let me just interrupt, Rav Yitzchak Hutner's letter, something which I've read through, it's in the Pachat Yitzchak. I don't have a copy of it, Rav Ram has a copy of it at home, actually. Whatever. The letter goes like this. Rav Hutner gets a letter from a Talmud talking about how he feels overburdened and how he's had a big Jurida. He's falling, like he feels religiously he's not doing well. And Rav Hutner, in his response, is an amazing response. Rav Hutner says, Rav Hutner lived last century, lived in the 20th century, he's a modern gadol. Rav Hutner said, he writes to the Talmud, when I saw you wrote to me, I said, this is going to be a good letter. When I saw what you wrote to me, that you were falling religiously, I said, this is a great letter. And he goes on and explains that when the pasuk says that a tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up, people usually say, why say tzaddik? Because even though he falls, he gets up. That, says Rav Hutner, is not the pshat. It is not the pshat that a tzaddik is a tzaddik because even though he falls, he gets up. He's a tzaddik because he fell. If you don't ever fall, you'll never be a tzaddik. Part of being a tzaddik is the process of falling, and then by falling, so to speak, hitting the bottom of the pool and propelling yourself higher than you were before. A tzaddik's growth involves falling. People should keep that in mind. Harold Hirschman says, during the Winter Zman, one has experienced that he will never get to try again. I would make a schedule that would block times for learning and free time, so I can make myself more advanced and still have fun. Along with that, Shimi Weinbach, who used to be in the yeshiva, says, make sure you feel good about the Torah that you learn. Ari Martyr says, get to sleep. Go too hard and you'll burn out. He adds, thought I'd make mine short. Thank you, Ari. And Shmuley Reese, who was a Shana Alf student about 5 years ago, says they should have a plan of what they want to accomplish by the end of this Zman, but even though it's important to learn, it's also important to take breaks so you don't burn out. Not breaks during Seder time. Good point, Shmuley. Okay? We now have reason number 6 and way number 6 to maximize your Zman. Beware of burnout. We once had a student here who worked really, really hard. And at the beginning of this month, the beginning of the year, he was taking on all these extra projects, and he wasn't ready for it. And we warned him and said, watch out. He didn't make it through the year because he literally burned out to the degree he had to go. It was a long time ago. But it can happen. Now, how do you know if you really need to relax? You're risking burning out. If this is maybe a way of thinking about it. If you say, I'm learning as much or more than most people here, and you feel that you're starting to burn out, then that's something you should pay attention to. If you are learning less than most people here, and you feel you need to burn out, that you are, if you're learning less, you probably feel the need to burn out. Let's put it in different terms. If you're learning less than most people, and you feel like you're burning out, you're probably not. You probably should be learning a little more, and you're just getting bored, because the only way to truly experience yeshiva 100% is to dive in. If you're not diving in, it's difficult. As I've said to many of you, I'll use the mashal again, that two people go to a swimming pool, and one person goes in, he feels it with his feet, goes, oh my God, that's freezing. Oh my God, that's freezing. The other guy just dives in. And for the first minute he's in, he goes, oh my God, that's freezing. And 5 minutes later, he's swimming, having a great time. And 3 hours later, when they go back home, people say to the first guy, how was the pool? He goes, awful. It was too cold. I didn't even go in. I spent the entire time just trying to get in. I could never get in. I kept on putting my foot in. It was freezing. So when they said, what about the other guy? That guy, he had a great time. So the first guy goes, well, obviously he likes cold pools. No. By diving in, you got used to it. And that was the only way you ever got a chance to experience it. Yeshiva is like a cold pool. For a lot of people, it's very hard to get in the beginning. You can't just put your foot in and say, I don't like it. Because you won't. Of course you won't. The only way to truly see if you like it is to dive in. And then almost always you do. But if somebody is not really working hard, not really giving it his all, it's like a guy who puts his foot in, takes it up, puts it in, takes it out. Of course he's not going to like it. And you go look at everybody else and say, oh, I guess they're the kind of guys who like learning. I'm the kind of guy who doesn't like learning. No. They're the kind of guy who dives into a pool and gets used to it pretty quickly and ends up loving it. That said, if you are burning out, be very careful. I remember when I was in yeshiva, there was a time I was in yeshiva after I was married, I was in Kollel, and I used to try to memorize Gemaras. At the time I was like, try to memorize Gemaras in my head. I don't remember him now, unfortunately. But I was trying to memorize certain Gemaras. It's the kind of thing I had my daughter in my ear was a baby, so in the middle of the night I'd give her a feeding, I'd, okay, let me go through some blog Gemaras, that kind of thing. Eventually I told my yeshiva, I feel like my head's going to explode. And he told me, then stop doing that, all right? If you're going to burn out, then don't go that far. Okay? That's number 6. Number 7. Once again, Jeremy Shapiro says, get a solid group of guys and go to one of your rebbeim for Shabbat. They almost never disappoint and love having students over. This includes that random rebbe in the back at night Seder you have never spoken to. I think that's an amazing point, by the way. It's amazing how much you get to know your rebbeim. It's amazing how much getting to know your rebbeim can help you in yeshiva. And this is one of the best ways to do it. Yonatan Oliver writes in capital letters, get out for Shabbat. Half the fun of being in Israel and about half the personal growth comes from getting out and experiencing the country and the people of Israel. He also says, go out and have some wacky adventures, and you will recall them fondly for the rest of your life. And he also says, go meet every gadol you possibly can. 40 years from now, you can tell your grandkids, I met the something or other Rebbe. And I think that he's onto something, so is Jeremy Shapiro about this, which is the 7th way to maximize your time is have adventures. Doesn't mean you have to do everything. But let's say, for example, Lag Bomer comes, and a bunch of guys are going to Meron. I'm not personally into Meron. But you know something, it's a wacky adventure. It's the kind of thing that when you're back in college in America, wherever you are, that's not what Lag Bomer's like. You don't have Meron kind of Lag Bomer. So if you don't go to Meron because you're morally or religiously against it, no problem. But if you don't go to Meron because you're too lazy to go to Meron, that's like it's really unfortunate. If you had a chance to meet with Chaim Kanievsky, then you just don't because you don't feel like it. That's very unfortunate. These are great opportunities. And sometimes they come up. It's a real waste when people don't go do something a little bit unusual or something uniquely Israeli because it feels like stacking out in bed. You know, every year we go for the Rikud Digalim, which means the flag dance on Yom Yerushalayim. Go to Yerushalayim, Rav Licky leads it, dance. One of the pictures up in the West Garden, you'll see Rav Licky at the flag dance. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. And most guys go, and a couple guys decide, I'm not going to go. And it's too bad because it's an experience you'll only have in Israel. It's an experience that you'll only get in Yom Yerushalayim in Israel. There's nothing else like it in the world. Make the most of it. Have wacky adventures. Okay, number 8. Number 8 is the longest, but it's the last category. Ready? Sam Malunchik. There will simply never be another time in your life when you can sit and learn uninterrupted for 6 months. It may seem like a lot now, but when you grow older and life picks up pace, you will forever cherish those moments that you spent between these walls. Take advantage of every second. Drink it in like a thirsty desert traveler. Ari Roth. The Zman, like life, is a series of small moments. To make the best of the Zman as a whole, you have to force yourself to make the most of each moment. I know for me personally, I always felt like I had more time to do the things I wanted to do long term, but time runs out eventually. Aaron Nitkin. These are not just another 6 months. They have the potential to set the precedent for who you can become in your adult life. If your yeshiva experience is going to have a lasting effect on you, this is when it happens. You're young and life is more simple now. You don't yet need to worry about finding employment, paying bills, or finding a shidduch. Eat, sleep, learn. Exercise is important too, but don't take it for granted. Eitan Marcus. 6 months in comparison to the rest of your life is essentially negligible. But it is these 6 months that the rest of your life takes its form. This is when you explore responding to goals, time management, writing notes, and existing outside of your comfort zone. You almost never get a chance to redo the yeshiva year. If you want to be successful in life, both religiously and in general, this is the time to soak up as much as you can. When the unfortunate reality of secular society is reintroduced, will you be like everyone else, where religion is a box to fill in on a form, or will it be your entire lifestyle? Evan Crane. It's really powerful for me to read all these comments as someone who has left yeshiva and is now trying to live a frum life in a secular college with a small Jewish community. I would advise the Talmidim to take a minute to think about how easy it is to grow in the yeshiva environment when you're struggling over Tosfot instead of struggling over finding 10 minutes a day to learn or minions to daven with. I wish I had the opportunity to redo Winter Zman because I definitely didn't get as much out of it as I could have, and I'll never have the same opportunity again. Although he is coming back from winter break. Yes. Okay? Good deal. Shimshon Seligson. I was there for 2 years. And I think the rest of the guys who stayed Shana will agree that I've been out of yeshiva for 3 years now, went by in a flash. It still feels like I was there yesterday. 6 months seems like a long time, and you will have ups and downs. But the key is to keep moving forward. In reality, it is a very short time. And you will cherish every day that you push yourself to get up to daven, every hour you sat in shir and tried to glean pearls of Torah from your Rebbe, and every second that you struggle to understand a Gemara with your Chavrusa. Because that will last with you forever, and that will always feel like it was with you only a second ago. Zvi Klein. Understand that your last 6 months could be your last chance to build a foundation on which you and your family will stand. This is the 8th and the final way, according to our Yisodei alumni, of how to maximize Winter Zman. Appreciate this opportunity, and that will inspire you to make the most of every moment. Even though it seems like a long time, 6 months can feel like an eternity. The Sikha can feel like an eternity. But the fact of the matter is, in the scheme of things, it's nothing. And one day you're going to look back and see it as the very best time, the time you really grew as a person. Don't lose this opportunity. And those, my friends, are the 8 ways. The 8 ways that our Yisodei alumni suggest you maximize your Zman. To set personal learning goals. Number 2, to decide that if it's worth doing well. 3, to take time for cheshbon nefesh. 4, not only worrying about intellectual growth, but also about personal and spiritual growth as a Torah Jew. Number 5, to have intellectual and spiritual humility. 6, to beware of burnout. Number 7, to have adventures. And number 8, to appreciate the opportunity, thereby inspiring you to make the most of every moment. So, that's all I have to say, but I want to conclude with something written, 2 more things that students wrote. 2 more things. And in some ways, what I'm about to read is a summary, I think, of almost everything that was said. It's by Mati Rosenberg. Okay. I would say yeshiva is like working out for your Jewish soul and mind. You will never get the chance to work out like this again. The more you work out now, the stronger you will be when you leave. If your Jewish soul and mind is strong enough when you leave, then it will be easier to maintain this muscle growth, Torah growth, when you go into the real world. Sure, you could work out when you leave, but never again will you have a 6-month break from life to do so. Compare Torah to lifting weights. That's what he says. And I think that's a very, very good way of thinking about yeshiva. It's a good, solid workout. It's a solid workout that's going to change your life. You don't always want to exercise, but if you do, it will change your life. It will make you have a better life. Everything you do afterwards will be better as a result. Hopefully you enjoy the workout too. People who get into the workout really do enjoy it. But the goal really isn't the workout itself, but rather how it affects the rest of your life. When you're 18, 19, 20 years old, it's just the start. It's just the start. And having a good workout this year will hopefully enable these 6 months to be the basis of something even greater, which is why I want to tell you that even though on some level I said I want to make these 6 months the best 6 months of your life, I don't really mean that. I want these 6 months to be the best 6 months of your life from when you were born until now. I want these 6 months to be the best. But if you use them well, if we're all successful in making the most of these 6 months, then my bracha is equally not that these 6 months are the best months of your life, but rather, these 6 months lead to something even better afterwards, which in turn leads to something even greater afterwards, which in turn leads to something even greater afterwards. So my bracha is that these 6 months be the best 6 months of your life up to now, and yet they'd be the worst of everything that comes afterwards, because afterwards you're going to use it so well, you're going to grow and more and become truly amazing people. And finally, me to say the last word goes to Zahavi Zeinelberg, who says, keep calm, and carry on. Okay? Have a